Greetings, YouTubers. This is a response to the train wreck of a video, Guns and Greenhouse Gases. The creator of this sham attempts to use a generalized bit of information concerning climate change or global computer climate models to prove that anthropogenic global warming is indeed occurring, and despite his claim that he's a classic liberal, he wants to take away your SUV and your guns too. I'll focus on his climate change nonsense this round. We'll leave his gun control nonsense for another day. I also found it funny that this user is responding to a popular YouTube video by Steven Crowder, apparently using his popularity as a platform for his nonsense. I guess this means he can't do it on his own. Let's get down to brass tacks, shall we? There are a myriad of problems with computer climate modeling and a great deal we don't yet know about the Earth's climate. Don't tell him that. He might get bummed out. For example, the widely accepted, albeit unproven theory that man-made global warming will accelerate itself by creating more heat-trapping clouds is challenged this month in new research from the University of Alabama in Huntsville. Instead of creating more clouds, individual tropical warming cycles that served as proxies for global warming saw a decrease in the coverage of heat-trapping cirrus clouds, says Dr. Roy Spencer, a principal research scientist in the University of Alabama Huntsville's Earth System Science Center. That's not what he expected to find. All leading climate models forecast that as an atmosphere warms, there should be an increase in high-altitude cirrus clouds, which would amplify any warming caused by man-made greenhouse gases. That amplification is positive feedback. What we found in month-to-month fluctuations of the tropical climate system was a strongly negative feedback. As the tropical atmosphere warms, cirrus clouds decrease. That allows more infrared heat to escape from the atmosphere to outer space. The results of this research were published in the American Geophysical Union's Geophysical Research Letters online edition. The paper was co-authored by Dr. John Christie, Dr. Danny Braswell, and Dr. Justin Hinillo of Lawrence Livermore National Laboratory, Livermore, California. 15 years ago, when we started monitoring global temperatures with satellites, we noticed these big temperature fluctuations in the tropics, Spencer said. What amounts to a decade of global warming routinely occurs in just a few weeks in the tropical atmosphere. Then, as if by flipping a switch, the rapid warming is replaced by strong cooling. It now looks like the change in cirrus cloud coverage is the major reason for this switch from warming to cooling. Contrary to computer climate modeling, less heat-trapping cirrus clouds were created as there was a warming in the tropics. Shh! Don't tell anyone. Climate change may not be as severe as predicted, suggests an international study published in Nature Geoscience that shows current computer modeling of carbon dioxide emissions from soils are overestimated by as much as 20%. The view, reported in the latest Nature Geoscience journal, is based on a study of Australian soils that finds the amount of carbon dioxide released by Australian soils is much lower than previously believed. The team found by including realistic estimates of charcoal in their climate prediction models, the amount of CO2 predicted to be released from 2 Australian savanna regions under a 3 degrees centigrade warming scenario was 18.3% and 24.4% lower than previously calculated. Then we have this. James Lewis writes in response to the very cold winter of 2007-2008 that threw a bit of a monkey wrench in the global warming cult and knocked their computer climate modeling off kilter. Today we see a spate of new computer models showing up in science journals, each one attempting to rescue some piece of the ecological goose that laid the golden egg. These are often not called models. With utter dishonesty, they are labeled new studies of the climate. But they are not empirical studies at all. They are little math models with new epicycles, but still based on the same gross oversimplifications. To reassure true believers, they always end up with the same punchline. Yes, Virginia, there really is a global warming fairy, and all the doomsayers are right. How good are the assumptions in these models? Well, consider the fate of Ferenc Miskolci, I'm probably butchering that name, a first-rate Hungarian mathematician who has published a proof that greenhouse warming may be mathematically impossible. His proof involves long equations, but the bottom line is that the warming models assume that the atmosphere is infinitely thick. Why? Because it simplifies the math. If, on the other hand, you assume the atmosphere is about 100 kilometers thick, 65 miles, which has a big advantage of being true, the greenhouse gas effect disappears. No more global warming or global whining. Miskolci once worked for NASA but resigned in disgust when they would not allow him to publish his work. It appeared in the peer-reviewed Hungarian journal Weather and looks legit. So it's the global warming faithful of NASA's Goddard Space Center, notably true believer Godfather James Hansen, who are always complaining to the media about Bush administration censorship. Obviously this was several months ago, who would have ended up censoring their own scientific skeptic. Cosmic justice for NASA, you might say. Again, I'll have all the relevant links on the right side too. Then we have this bit of bad news for the global warming cult. According to a new study on global warming, climate scientists at the University of Rochester, the University of Alabama, and the University of Virginia found that the climate change models based on human influence do not match observed warming. The new report, which challenges the claims of Gore and the IPCC, was published in the December 2007 issue of the International Journal of Climatology of the Royal Meteorological Society. The report was written by David Douglas at the University of Rochester, John Christie, University of Alabama, and Benjamin Pearson and S. Fred Singer of the University of Virginia. They say this: our findings basically are that fingerprints, that is to say the pattern of warming that's predicted by greenhouse models, does not match the fingerprints of observations. So there is a disconnect between greenhouse models and the actual reality of observations, Singer told Cybercast News Service. Excuse me. This means that the greenhouse effect, while real, is not very important in producing climate change, he said. It's a lot smaller than what the models calculate. So they're saying it's there, but the effect's not as great. Researchers compared predictions of 22 widely used climate models to elaborate schematics that try to forecast how the global weather system will behave, with actual readings gathered by surface stations, weather balloons, and orbiting satellites over the past 30 years. While most of the models predicted that the middle and upper parts of the troposphere, 1 to 6 miles above the Earth's surface, would have warmed drastically over the past 30 years, actual observations showed only a little warming, especially over tropical regions. These computer models often leave out things such as our oceans functioning as a natural carbon sink, and the fact that those things called plants absorb CO2, and many agricultural staples function better in higher levels of CO2. These climate models also severely underestimate the effects of the sun. Yes, the sun has an effect on our climate. Much of the global warming controversy has been that skeptics say we simply don't know enough about the climate, and that those forcing functions to develop accurate models and predictions. The global warmers say we do, and proceed to advocate crippling, costly, ineffective public policy to stop the warming. David Wojcik writes an excellent 500-word summary of this complex issue. The warming advocates have not had full knowledge of these climate drivers, nor has anyone else, and therefore can't produce defensible models of our climate at this time. As such, any allegation that man-made CO2 is a major climate driver is pure speculation, less probable now since there are other powerful natural forces at work. The advocates do not know what the future climate will be because they can't know what is unknown. No one can at this poor level of climate understanding. The effects of clouds on the climate and how they are formed are huge, complex, and largely unknown. Some types of clouds reflect solar energy back into space, creating cooling. Other clouds at lower levels trap energy which is reflected back to the Earth, creating a heating phenomenon. Worse, the physical-chemical mechanisms for cloud formation have not been satisfactorily understood. Thus, these large uncertainties have not made cloud-forming mechanisms suitable for modeling. The fact that this character hangs his hat on these climate models is laughable at best, dangerous at worst. And lastly, and I'll have the link on the right side there. Several agricultural staples that I alluded to earlier do perform a lot better, higher yields, less irrigation required, in higher CO2 levels, like potatoes, Japanese rice, and northeast Colorado steppe shortgrass. I referenced that in another video. All respond positively to higher than ambient levels of CO2.